guys, this is Bill from Spencer1984.com, and today we're taking a look at the second of the three Revell Blacktop Warrior series kits from 2001, Alley Rat. And in last week's review of Killer Bee, I mentioned the thought behind these kits was for Revell to take existing toolings, give it some new box art, new decals, and a backstory for a post-apocalyptic theme. And this kit actually has a much longer backstory than some of the others. Killer Bee was basically their Baja Bug, a couple of minor variations. Pink Poison was the Jeep Poncho kit, but this started life in the late 70s as Sneaky Pete, which looked exactly like this, but then Revell made quite a few variations of it, and it's one of the longer, more varied kits in their history. So I wanted to just show off kind of a couple other options that you might find many of these parts in. So, like I said, Sneaky Pete was the first version of it, and then after that came Midnight Cowboy, which was basically the same cab, but it had a wrecker back half. And then the next iteration of it, Revell corrected the front end of it into a standard Chevy pickup truck. And you had kits that were variations of this, where you've got the same step-side box, you have the same roof panel with the horns and the lights, but it's got the regular stock front fenders and hood. Still didn't have a stock front bumper on it, but for the most part it was a mildly customized Chevy pickup truck. And then after this version of it, they did a little bit more retooling on it, and you had these fleet side versions of the truck. So in this case, the cab was the same as the Redneck Power pickup, but now they've grafted a fleet side short box on it. And in this particular case, it also has the stomper wheels and different front bumper. But again, this is based on what was originally the Sneaky Pete tooling. And give it a few more years, and we saw yet another variation, which looked like this. So now you had the sunroof instead of the lights and horns, but you were back to the step side and the stock looking front fenders and hood. And in this particular release, it had a custom front bumper, custom side pipes, slick mirrors on it. And although these four kits don't really look like they were all based on the same tooling, there are a few tells, and I'll kind of get into that as we're looking at Alley Rat. So let's start in with that. In the box art, it's got the same story on the side of it, with the news items of the day all crammed together to make a scary story. The front of the box is repeated on both end flaps. And we've got a couple of alternate views here, showing the front and back with all of the appropriate weathering. And here we got the decal sheet, where we've got some fake armor-plated panels here. You've got the hood, the rear fenders, sides of the hood, and like with Killer Bee, we got some windows here, front and rear window. Little awkward there that they've got metallic bullet holes right in the middle of the glass, but we'll ignore that. Got Alley Rat there for the tailgate, the skull and crossbone for the grill, couple of Blacktop Warriors for the doors, and like the rest of the kits in the series, a bunch of spray-painted road signs. And we've also got the instruction sheet, which again repeats the box art picture, the story of what's going on. And it's the standard exploded diagram style instructions. Here we've got the decal placement guide. So, all in all, pretty basic stuff. So now taking a look at the kit itself, first thing we've got is the cab. And this is actually two pieces molded in one run. You just got to cut out these little standoffs here. And generally pretty clean work. We've got some scuffing here on the hood. Not that that's a problem. But the seams look pretty good. The detailing looks okay. And with the cab, you can actually start seeing the history and lineage here. If you look at the two cabs, obviously the front fenders and everything ahead of the firewall is different, but they've got the same sunroof cutout, same doors. They even have the same holes for the side view mirrors here. And that's where you can see how these evolved. Because this one is the redneck power pickup. And if you look at the engine bay here and compare that to the Stomper, you see that really the only difference is the Stomper. They added the top half of the engine in here. And this is something that Revell actually carried over into their 77 Wrecker that has been recently reissued. Because that kit is also based on this tooling. The Wrecker box is not the same that came in Midnight Cowboy, but they're close enough that you can kind of recreate your own Midnight Cowboy out of the parts if you wanted to. But so, we've got these two, and you can see how they were based off of the same toolings. And then the later Hot Rod Chevy pickup is identical to the Redneck Power pickup. All the same markings inside the fenders, same cutout for the sunroof and everything. So just kind of a neat that even though some minor details have changed, like the way that the side view mirrors are supposed to be mounted is different, you can still see the history of the truck throughout. And so kind of a neat thing how so many variations have come from this one tooling. But at any rate, so here's the cab. Next up, we have the pipes from the engine to the side pipes, tailgate, front axle, drive shaft, fan belt, some wheel retainers. And these do have quite a bit of flash on them and need to be cleaned up. You can see especially on the pipes there, they're kind of oblong in cross section. You got a pretty nasty bit there on the tailgate that needs to be cleaned up. Quite a bit right through here that needs to be cleaned up. So this tooling definitely showing its age at this point. Here we've got the interior and one of the rear step side fenders. Got the other rear fender here and the firewall, which That's a pretty thick piece to mate to the flip nose. So that's something that's obviously quite a bit different from later toolings. And we've got the bottom half of the back wall of the cab, the front of the box, and the box. And again, that's something where you can compare this to the Redneck Power Pickup and see where they're based on the same toolings. Got the box part right there, but then because this has the full rear window, where this only goes up to the rear window, there's some differences there, but same rear fenders, and that was something that was kind of carried through. And here we've got the top of the cab roof, header pipes, fuel tank, fan, steering wheel, two main halves of the engine, top of the engine, and the radiator. And this sprue actually looks pretty clean. Unlike that first one that we were looking at, there's not really a whole lot of flash on this. It will require some cleanup. You can see a little bit there on the headers, but that one's not too bad. And here we have the chassis, dashboard, and the 4 leaf springs. And again, there's some bits that need to be cleaned up here, but overall this is not too bad. Last black part, we've got the rear axle. And again, there's some flash that needs to be cleaned up on it. You got some big pieces here, but the axle itself does not look too bad once you get those cleaned off. Glass looks pretty good, and it comes with the sunroof if you wanted to use that instead of the bit with the horns and the lights. A little bit of distortion through the windshield, but not too bad. Chrome sprue. You got the semi-truck style front grille and bumper. The headlights are solid chrome pieces, no clear lenses. That's too bad. Couple extra tanks there. Got the mirrors and some really awful looking radio antennas. There's a lot of flash on those that needs to be cleaned up. Got the front wheels there. Those look pretty good. And the deeper back wheels, which, although you got a lot of flash right here, that's on the inside of the wheels, so that might be something that we can kind of work around without too much problem. The horns are like the mirrors. Those are pretty awful. We got the 2 steps for the sides of the truck, the 2 bars for the sides of the box, the stacks, rear bumper, valve covers, more tanks, differential, and lights. And unfortunately, as with the Killer B, the chrome in this kit is not great. In this case, it's relatively smooth. You got some dust, it looks like, here in the front bumper. And it's actually kind of nice that it's a matte finish, appropriate for the vehicle. But there's so much flash on it that needs to be cleaned up that it's probably going to be better to strip it entirely and start over. And then last thing, you just got the 4 tires. Fronts are somewhat narrower than the backs. And like many of the parts, there's quite a bit of cleanup needed on these. Nothing totally ruining the kit, but this was not one of Revell's cleaner toolings or nicer jobs in general. And so that's all there is to this one. It's a fairly simple kit. It's kind of nice to have seen Sneaky Pete reissued relatively recently. Unfortunately, that hasn't positively affected eBay prices, because Alley Rat is still a fairly expensive kit, especially for the quality of the tooling of it. But it's not bad, and it's very buildable. I've certainly seen and have built worse than this. And like Killer Bee, my plan for it is to do something like the Boxart, but with a little more detail than what they could put into it. I'd probably do some actual armor plating on the hood and the windshield, side windows, things like that. Yeah, this is something that, depending on how much I can get done on Killer Bee, this might be something that I start in on after I finish with that. And so there we go. I'm going to be posting a out-of-box review of Pink Poison next week, and we'll have seen all three of them then. So check back, and thanks for watching.